For people that are new to the comic book industry, it's easy to go about recommending your favorite stories and your favorite story arcs, but let's ask the basic question. What are comic books anyway? What's up everybody, I'm Stan and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Comics Classroom, where I'm going to go over some interesting and unique topics regarding the comic book industry as a whole and try to give you a little bit of extra information. Today we're going to ask the question, what are comic books? So this isn't really an existential kind of exposition as to what matters in a comic book. What does it need to be? This is very simple, it's concise, and it's going to be able to help you understand where you're at and what you're looking for. So, comic books in general, they can be described in as simple as two words, sequential art. And what does that really mean? Sequential art is a series of images that tell a story, particularly in this case something that's been illustrated. And to be honest with you, the first series of sequential art could probably be traced back to cave paintings, where hunters told the glorious stories of their fantastic conquests. But if we want to concentrate on comic books, we're going to have to go a little bit more modern. So, early as the 1920s and previously, we've had basically what's known as pulps, and these were typically books that were sold for around 10 cents and featured very common man kind of heroes. There are a few occasions where we have characters like Doc Samson, Flash Gordon, and eventually the Phantom in 1936 that was the first costumed superhero to really take place inside a pulp comic. However, comic books as we know them really started with Action Comics #1 in 1938 with the introduction of Superman as a character. And this was the golden age of comic books. So if you refer to comic books in various ages, this is the beginning. This is what is considered the genesis of what we consider comic books today. Once we get past the golden age, we have a period where, World War II was happening, and there was a lot of upheaval inside the comic book industry, so there was a severe amount of backlash. When combined with the pulp drives of the time for the war effort, and this whole kind of stigma that was associated with comic books, it took a little while for superhero comics to regain their proper status. And that wasn't really until the Silver Age kicked off in the 1950s. And from that point in time, we got introductions of revised characters like Barry Allen's The Flash, Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern, Spider-Man made his appearance in the 1960s, and it continued on until where we're at today. They definitely became something that transcended generations. They brought more people into the fray. And that's where we got mass production. We got a lot of giant releases. We had the development of characters like Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the prevalence to the point where we were having millions of copies of comic books sold every single month. That was a great time, but it also led to a giant crash in the late 1990s, early 2000s that caused comic books to almost collapse. It wasn't until the real resurgence of comic book movies based on properties developed back in the 60s, like Iron Man, the resurgence of Batman from Christopher Nolan, the generation of the Marvel Universe really kind of gave the comic book industry a shot in the arm that it greatly needed. But what it comes down to is that comic books as we understand them today, are a medium. They're a great way to tell stories, they're a great way to get people immersed, and they're great for all ages. So when it comes to the question of what are comic books are sequential illustrations that are meant to tell a story, and they're usually serialized. So there can be one specific, issue of a particular comic book that tells one singular story, but overall our greater understanding of comic books as a whole is that they're going to tell a story over multiple pieces. They're going to be in multiple parts that when combined make a great overall tale. So that is the answer to the question, what are comic books? So thanks for watching this episode of Comics Classroom, where we go over topics and questions regarding the comic industry. If you like what you see, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe as well to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows, and games, as well as more educational content regarding comics and what they really mean and how the characters have evolved in that world.